Welcome back to Morning Express. We're glad you're watching. We'll have the person of interest in the next hour. Our guest a little bit caught up in traffic, but he'll be here shortly. That is Senior Counsel Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi. Also, if you like, the Grand Mullahs. So stand by for that at 8 a.m. should be here. And that person of interest chat will take off. But first, to our lifestyle chat today. And we're talking about adoption. Would you like to adopt? Well, this is one you want to listen into, because you will be able to understand how the process works, what you may need to do. And also we'll have our phone lines scrolling numbers on the screen, and you can call in as well and be part of the conversation. Joining me in studio is James Peru, who's social worker with Child Welfare Society of Kenya. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
You're welcome.
So when we're talking about adoption, are we seeing more people getting into adoption, or is it still you know, a lot of children in these homes, because there's quite a number of homes in the country? Do you see people actually taking the kids home, or do they just come to visit?
Many people are adopting, although there's still much that needs to be done, because others are yet to know what adoption is all about.
Okay.
There's that mentality that adoption is buying a child. And so with that kind of mentality, yes, there are those that are aware, that have come up to adopt, but still, there's still much that has to be done.
Has to be done.
Yep.
So demystify it for those who may be unclear about what adoption then is all about. What is it? What are we talking about?
Basically, adoption is a process that gives someone who is not, for different reasons. It could be they're not able to get their own child, or they just want to adopt to give a child a better life. So it's a process that gives this person that opportunity to get a child. And I'm saying a process because there are many steps that are involved, from the initiation of the process until you complete it and you have the adoption order, and actually you get the adoption certificate, after which the process is complete.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there a time frame? Is it one that is that stands, or does it vary depending with the different situations in terms of how long it takes to finalize the process of adoption?
It depends. You cannot really quantify and say it will take 1 year, because there are those applicants that come, and after they have taken the application forms, they take time before they fill them and they return them to us. And still there are those that after we have done the matching and we've blessed them with children, they take longer before they initiate the court process, which again may not be very predictable because of the court calendar and everything. When you go to court, you will get a date depending on when the diary will allocate you.
Okay.
And so if you take longer to initiate the process, you may just initiate it and the court goes on recess, and until they come back, that is when you can pick up from where you left. So really it will depend on the commitment of the client and also their proactiveness in following up
the process.
Yeah.
So take us through, try best you can in terms of the process from the beginning. Do I go to a place and identify a child and come and say I want this child, and then now what happens after that? Or how does it happen? Do you allocate and say, no, you want to adopt? Okay, we're giving you this particular one. And then how do these procedures happen?
You cannot go to a home and say, I want this particular child. Actually, according to the law, that one is wrong, and it's not to be permitted, because we've had cases where clients come and they have identified children somewhere that they want to adopt. But the right procedure would be they would go to an adoption society, where they would make inquiries and everything. They will be told of the process, and after the process is explained to them, they are given application forms that they go and fill at their own convenience. And together with the application forms, there are other requirements that we need from them. Maybe we may want to know where they come from, and to ascertain that, we'll need a letter from the chief. We would want to know where they are working. Is there a source of income in the family? We'd also want to know do they have any property? Because again, as you can look at the recent past, we have had cases where adopted children have been chased away because their adoptive parents have passed on or something like that. But we want to know from the word go, if they have property, are they willing for these children to adopt? Because actually, according to the law, they have a right. And so we would want them to bring us all those documents. There are many of them, a letter from the church. We would need also a medical report. We would need a photo that we use much later in the process. And after they have brought all these documents, we open a file for them, after which we call them for an office interview. And we get to know more. If I'm Peru that I want to adopt, who is Peru? Does he have siblings? Where are they? If they're there, what is their opinion of him adopting? Are they willing to support? And if he's adopting, what is his plan in taking care of this child? And we do that interview. It's called the office interview. After we do that, we organize for a date that we go and visit. We go and visit the applicant, and we get to see where the child will go. And where necessary, we may advise, because sometimes it may not be in the child's best interest to be in a home that they may not be very well taken care of. So we assess, and after that we compile a report. We combine the report from the interview and the home visit, and we make a home study report that will present to the adoption case committee that approves all the applicants. And after their approval, that is when we start to look for children that match them, and they are free for adoption, and they are within the age bracket that they requested for, after which they are placed with the children.
I'd just like to request, I'm sure you're talking about how to adopt. Let's change that tag, not quite the Child Welfare Society. Let's talk more about the court process, which you've mentioned. What exactly happens there? Because we hear, yes, there's a court process, some take very long. What exactly is that for?
During the court process, normally when you adopt, you go to court 3 times. You go for the first hearing, there's the second hearing, and then there's the ruling. And in some cases, the judge may decide after the second ruling to grant the orders. But normally you go to the court for the first hearing, whereby there is a person called a guardian ad litem that the court appoints. This is a person that knows the history of the child from the time that the child was placed with the applicants. And their mandate is to, 1, make sure that the adoptive parents provide for this child and the child is given everything. And more than that, they'll also need to do a report that will be filed in court, just to inform the court of how the child is faring since the time of placement. And so during the first hearing, the court gives this person that mandate to act in that capacity. And then at the same time, there is an order that is given to the Director of Children's Services to visit the applicant and to file their report in as far to file their report explaining the suitability of the applicant to adopt. And so after the first hearing is done, normally sometimes the judge may give a time frame within which the reports are to be done. It may give 45 days or so. And after the report is filed, then you go for the second hearing. Then again, the second hearing will be pegged on the court diary. When you go to court, you get the second hearing. And the second hearing is to just look at all the reports in the file. By the time you initiate the court process, the Adoption Society must have visited the applicant and done another report that is filed in court. So during the second hearing, the court, the 3 reports are presented: the report from the Director of Children's Services, the report from the Adoption Society, and the report from the guardian.
You mentioned something about how the whole process at least begins, and said that it would be wrong for one to go out and select a child and say, this is the one I want to adopt. But for the cases I've had, I've seen a couple of celebrities, they have selected who to adopt, and numerous people that I know of actually go and say, I want to adopt this child. So do we have some loopholes in the whole law and how the system is working, in that we're having people identifying who they want to take up?
That may happen, but when it happens, the only allowance given by the law is if the child has special needs. In such cases, because leaving the child in the home would not be in their best interest. So it may be allowed, but if there are those that have done it, they could have done it, but doesn't necessarily mean that they did the right thing. It is wrong, because they need to be assessed before. And after that, that is when the child is sought for them. They don't look for the child themselves, and they are matched. Actually, it is rare that you will be given a child that you've seen before. Sometimes there are those that will come to us and they will tell us. Have you not
heard of that? Because interesting you say that it's rare, because I think it's quite common.
For those of them that came to us, they come and tell us, I have seen a child in such and such a place. I would want to adopt them. And then we get to outline the process that it should be. Okay. And with that understanding, they understand that it's not because we have anything against them that we would want to give them that child. But when you look at the reality on the ground, for example, if all of us were given an opportunity to go and pick on the specific children we would want to adopt, it means there are some children that will spend their lives in the homes. Nobody will pick on them. Which again should not be the case.
And who qualifies to adopt? Who's eligible to adopt?
For adoption, for you to qualify to adopt one, you must have attained the age of 25 years, but below the age of 65. And to add on that, the difference in the age, the gap between the applicant and the child should be at least 21 years. So if you fall within that age bracket, you can qualify to adopt.
All right, so a single woman, man can adopt as well, doesn't have to be married?
Yeah, single applicants can adopt, but it's not, when you look at the Children's Act, it does not allow, for example, for a man to apply and adopt a female child. Yes, they can adopt, but they can only be first placed with a child of the same sex unless there are special circumstances that would warrant them to be placed with a child of a different sex.
Okay. Yeah. Where does the payment come in, and what determines how much one pays? Is there any particular point in that whole procedure that there's payment being done?
At child welfare, for now, adoption we don't charge at all. Actually, that is part of the government initiative, because of the understanding that there are quite a number of people that have that mentality that adoption is about buying children. And so to help in eradicating that mentality, for us, we are doing it free. We initially used to charge just 1,000 shillings for the application, when you apply the application fee. But with time, it was scrapped off. You don't pay anything. And even for those of our clients that come and they have adopted and maybe they are not able to go through the court process, invoking the services of a lawyer, we train them on self-representation. So if at all they'll have to pay, maybe the only amount that they will pay is the charges for filing the application in court. But the entire, the money that they would have paid for the entire process is paid for by the organization.
And how long, especially when you're looking at the different organizations, who takes care of this process, adoption? Do you have different organizations coming into play, or is there a specific structure that if you want to adopt, these are the channels and you don't have other different channels that one could use?
For us as an organization, as I said, we are funded by the government. And as part of the government initiative to make sure that people understand adoption and get it in the right way, that is why we get the funding and we don't charge anything, so that whatever it is that someone would have paid is paid for by the organization, because we have the government funding.
But there are other organizations other than yours that conduct this?
For sure, when you go to the other societies, you will have to pay, and there is some amount that you'll have to pay.
All right.
But it's not necessarily for the child, but for
the process. What kinds of follow-ups and systems have been put in place after the adoption process? The child has been placed. Is it now done? Forget about that situation, sorted, or are there follow-ups to ensure that all is going well?
Of course, after you have been placed with a child, it's not yet done, because sometimes you encounter parents, first-time parents, and it would be really a hard nut for them to crack if you are to place them with a child and leave them alone. And what we do after the placement, of course, there is that fostering period for 3 months before the applicants can be allowed to initiate the court process. That one helps us as an organization to monitor the progress of the child. Maybe if at the time of placement, the child did not have a very good appetite, 1 month later, how are they faring? and maybe something cropped up in the course of those 3 months, and this parent is wondering what is happening, they come to us, and of course we network with the homes and we get to give them the relevant assistance.
Okay.
And then after they initiate the court process, we also have subsequent adoptive parent meetings, and these ones are to just aid in number of issues, because there are those that have issues in the course of parenting after they are placed, but when they have a sitting with other parents, sometimes it's not even us that give the solutions. They talk it among themselves and they get the solution. So we have many meetings.
Okay, and in the event you find that the placement is not quite working out, perhaps some abuse, or this environment is just not suitable for the child, what happens then?
When the placement doesn't work out, for if you have applied for adoption and you've been placed with a child and you feel that you're not comfortable for any reason to continue living with that child, you are free to bring the child back to the society within the first 3 months. And then after the 3 months have elapsed and you feel you're comfortable, you are to continue with keep staying with the child. But in the event that we realize there is abuse or any kind of thing that endangers the life of this child, then we have the mandate to revoke that adoption, to take back the child from the applicant and to look for an alternative home. Because if you look at the law, until you have finished the court process, the process is not complete and that child is not entirely yours.
Finally, I'll ask this maybe for one who's wondering, maybe they've adopted, but is it something you advise for those who adopt to have that conversation with the child at some point, that by the way, you're adopted, or do you just let them, the parents or whoever, the adopted parents, to decide?
Actually, it is their right. It's the right of an adopted child to know that they are adopted. And what we do in those subsequent meetings, we also have disclosure meetings whereby parents are trained on how they can disclose to the children that they are adopted. Because if they don't, one time or sooner they will know. And it would be catastrophic if they are to learn of that from a neighbor or maybe a relative who has ill motives. So we train them on how to disclose bit by bit, until by the time they are telling the child you are adopted, they are aware of it and they take it up in a better way, as opposed to when they just come and tell them, I adopted you. That one causes them a lot of psychological damage and they are not able to function normally.
Thank you. Thank you very much, James
You're
Peru,
welcome.
for joining us this morning, social worker with Child Welfare Society of Kenya. We appreciate you. We appreciate you for shedding light on that child adoption process for us this morning. And we're glad you're watching Morning Express. It is just a few minutes to, I think about 2 minutes to 8 a.m. We finally have our person of interest in studio as well. So in the next hour, James Smart will be talking to Senior Counsel Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi, or if you like, the Grand Mullah. Keep your questions coming for him. James has been retweeting quite a number of those that we've already forwarded and tweeted us. So stay tuned for that conversation in the next hour.